The tragic Christchurch earthquakes of 2010 and 2011 caused incredible amounts of damage throughout the whole city and left thousands of people without homes. Perhaps as a direct relationship to that, we are now seeing a huge explosion in tiny house builders in Christchurch City. Today we've travelled to Christchurch to meet student tiny house builder Stefan Cook, who's making the most of reclaimed materials from earthquake damaged homes to construct his very own tiny house.
Hey Bryce.
G'day Stefan, how's it going mate?
You alright? Welcome to my biggest tiny house.
There she is.
I live in Christchurch, so there's a lot of demolition going on here at the moment after the earthquakes. So there's a lot of recycling or demolition of buildings, which means a whole lot of recyclable material. Not necessarily free, but really cheap. So there was kind of that going off, and yeah, I was thinking of building something of some kind. And my flatmate at the time showed me a picture of a tiny house, and so that kind of spawned off and went off in one direction. It was like, oh, that'd be cool to do that one day.
Absolutely massive for a tiny house, isn't it? I think this has got to be the biggest one I've seen so far.
Yeah, I guess that's why I call it my biggest tiny house.
So how long is it actually?
It's 8 metres plus the drawbar, so that's 9.5 metres.
Right.
And then 2.5 metres wide and 4 metres high.
So, off the bat, I mean, when you're making a decision to build an 8 metre long tiny house, that does make it a bit more complicated for moving and towing and that sort of thing. So, why did you decide to make it 8 metres long?
Because 6 wasn't long enough. It was just like, well, if you're going to go 6, let's go 7. Well, actually, let's just go one more.
Where do you stop then?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in New Zealand, you can have up to 12.5 metres.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a bit ridiculous, but you know, trying to stay within that weight allowance, I thought I could push my length a little bit longer.
Because that definitely is the big challenge when you're looking at actually constructing a larger tiny house, is staying under the 3.5 tonnes.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. So I was, at that stage I had some pretty rough calculations, but you know, I was pretty keen to build something that was comfortable for my lifestyle and what I wanted.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. All right, let's go take a look inside.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, when you actually step inside this house, the very first thing is a sense of space. It actually feels huge.
Yeah. I've not been inside another tiny house, so it's I can't really talk from experience on that side, but it's spacious to my lifestyle and what I feel is spacious. So it's nice to hear your thoughts. And
incredibly high ceilings, which is an immediate benefit, and then I think the layout in here is just incredibly open plan. I mean, you can stand there and you know, see 8 metres right way down to the end. And I think you've been incredibly clever with how you've used the windows in here as well. I love this feature. This is such a great idea. And I'm guessing this window opens right the way up?
Yeah, do you want to see it? I know it's cold outside.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. So, this is just a bifold aluminium double glazed window. And
wow.
Yeah, so
what an awesome feature.
It's something, you know, living in Christchurch, having recyclable windows that are of really high quality and reasonably cheap for what it is. Yeah.
So these came out of earthquake damaged homes?
Yep, this one and also the kitchen window, which is opening up the same way. And
I can't think of anything nicer than sitting there to have your breakfast or pulling the laptop up when you got to work. Yeah. What a great idea.
I wouldn't say, you know, that bar table wasn't in the original design. It was just, all of this is just evolving as materials come to use, and now I'm living in here, I get an idea of space and size and what kind of works for me. Yeah, and I think that's so true, that when you're actually designing a space on paper, really often it's hard to gauge how it's actually going to feel when you're standing in it. Yeah. And also, if you can get pigeonholed a bit too much if you're saying, no, that is where this is going, and you end up, you go down to the shop or find someone to build it, or find the materials to build it. You're like, I didn't realise that was going to cost that much. Yeah. So, I mean, that table there's a So far it's cost me $60. And yeah, that's a nice bit of macrocapa.
Yeah. The stair design. I mean, this is a really, really cool, really functional way of doing the stairs.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess it keeps with the theme of welded steel.
Yep. I mean, obviously I'm still to put the tread up, but it's something which having the option to build it out of steel, and it's that's the same material that the frame is built out of.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just a case of working with materials that's on hand, you know.
And the kitchen.
Yeah. The kitchen bench and sink, I got that for $10. Mm-hmm. So it was basically just a case of seeing what works and what works around the appliances, because the appliances need to be a certain distance from each other.
Sure.
And from windows. So the bench used to actually go from that seam there back to about over here. And so I've cut that off and chucked that end at that end.
Chucked down the other end.
Yeah, right. And kind of hidden that through the oven. The hot water is a Truma. It's a Truma boiler. It's a 14-litre boiler, so you can set that to 60 or 70 degrees.
So 14 litres. That's not a lot of hot water, is it?
It's not. But when you combine that with your cold water, you get 25, 30 litres out of it, depending on what size restrictor you put on your head.
Right.
So I've been putting a graph together just as I go along, and just trying to understand how much water I'm using and how much gas, and what temperatures work for me, and what size restrictor kind of works for me. So at the moment I'm pretty much setting the temperature at 60 degrees with a 4 litre per minute head, and that gets about a 6-minute shower, and that's actually using...
That's all right.
Yeah, so that's using, I think it's 22, 25 litres of water. So that 14 litres, that's not a 14 litre shower, that's a 25 litre shower. Yeah.
And let's take a look at the bathroom.
Yeah. So just coming through, shower.
Very cool idea having the window there.
Yeah, so it's also a escape route.
Yep.
That was kind of pretty key for me, having more than one quick escape route, and for emergencies, or even having a quick coffee on the deck at the back. So yeah, it wasn't really until I moved in here was like, oh, actually that's big enough you can walk through and have a cuppa in the morning.
Or just take a really scenic shower.
Exactly. Yeah. Options are open. Yeah.
And so what about power here?
What about power? It's all 12 volt, and so that's all going to run off a solar system. At the moment I'm just getting an idea of how much use I'm actually going through to determine what size solar panel I'm going to be using. Right. So it's a case of just plugging in positive, negative solar, the solar cable into here, and this one runs off to the battery, and then it comes out through, you've got your black that goes down onto your earth, onto your chassis, and the red runs off to the fuse board. Through the fuse board, then you just run all your lines off there. Right. So it's it's if you can wire up speaker wire and know red and black, then it's not much more complex than that.
And I think what you're doing is really, really clever as well, because you can do all the calculations you want, but in the end you're never really going to be sure how much energy you need until you're actually living in the space.
Yeah. Yep. It's a different mindset, I think, and you notice it a lot when you are in a smaller space. Yeah.
And I think that because you are in such a small space, that everything is more immediate.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like if you overconsume anything, then you have an immediate result of that. You use too much water, you run out of water. You use too much energy, you run out. And so you have to be careful and conscious of every decision that you make.
Yeah, for sure. With the gas, I'm using a 14 litre LPG tank. I've got 2 of them, so when one runs out, I've got the other one on standby. But the first tank I went through in 4 weeks. Right. So the $35 to fill here locally.
Yeah.
So that's $8.75 a week for gas.
Which is
and
pretty cheap. I mean.
Yeah, so that gas is the heater, and you know how cold it is here at the moment. That heater's been on a lot.
Yeah.
The oven, hot water, and the fridge, which is on 24/7.
Brilliant.
So, yeah, it's kind of pros and cons, you know.
Yeah.
What works for you.
And so it looks like an incredibly large sleeping loft up there as well.
Yeah, should we check it out?
Yeah, let's go. Right. So this is definitely a pretty large sleeping loft, isn't it?
Yeah. So this is a queen size bed.
Yep.
It's got the mattress in the base underneath.
Yeah.
So this is just on 2 meters, and then the kind of landing pad, I guess, that's another 2 meters.
Yeah.
So the whole length of the loft is 4 meters. And then just the curved roof. That hole there is a laundry chute. So I'll eventually put a basket in underneath. I've always wanted a laundry chute, so that was just something that you come along with when you're halfway through building something.
Great idea. You can't ever feel claustrophobic in a tiny house that's designed like this, because it's actually like being in one very large room.
Right.
Isn't it? I mean, this is larger than a room in your normal house, isn't it?
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah. We had a few people over on Friday night for some just some drinks, and it was a case of just having, it was like having a kitchen party. Us Kiwis always have kitchen parties. It doesn't matter where you have a party.
Everyone ends up in the kitchen.
Yeah. So there's houses with smaller kitchens than this. So it was like, well, what's the difference? So we had 18 people in here last Friday night.
Awesome.
And it was comfortable.
Well, mate, thank you very much for showing me around the place. It's really, really impressive, and I look forward to coming back when it's all tidied up and all finished. For
sure.
Have another look.
Yeah, well, there's a few things to keep me busy with, so yeah. Be keen to show you when you're back down these ways.
Absolutely, mate.
Too easy.
When finished, Stefan's build promises to be packed with a lot of very unique and clever design features. We're going to be back later this year to catch up with Stefan and see how his build's progressing. We're also going to visit some other very cool tiny house projects that are happening here in Christchurch City.